All of the problems in this world come from bad decisions based on fear. This is what the first purpose of this program is, for people to feel good. As long as there are people in the world who don't know that we exist, I have not succeeded. And thus not be afraid to invest in a proper software or the proper team. That's a mistake. This is what I would do differently, Nick.
Welcome to MemberFix Radio. My guest today is Pomares, who's the founder and CEO of Mendability, which is a telehealth company that delivers sensory enrichment therapy, which is an evidence-based, non-pharmaceutical approach that uses structured sensory experiences to boost brain plasticity for autistic children and others with neurological challenges. Building on decades of work by his mother, Claudie Gordon Pomares, Kim helped transform her clinic-based methods into an online platform and expert system that guides thousands of families through simple, daily, brain-boosting activities that they can do at home. Kim, for people who haven't heard of you before, would you like to briefly introduce yourself and just briefly tell us what Mendability does in your own words?
Sure. Thanks for this lovely intro. I think you said everything just right. It's a pleasure to be here. I remember when you reached out to me, you said, "Hey, we want to talk to successful entrepreneurs." And I remember saying, "I don't think I'm one yet," because when I see what happens to people who do this program and how much more comfortable they feel, how much more confident they feel, and I think, okay, well, all of the problems in this world come from bad decisions based on fear. Most of the time, they have these protecting mechanisms, or that they want to protect something, and it's usually themselves. And when they do our program, they're chill, they're relaxed, and they're happy, and they're confident. They take risks, and they're not afraid of what they used to be afraid of before. And I'm thinking, this is a solution for every problem in the world. And so I'm thinking, as long as there are people in the world who don't know that we exist, I have not succeeded. And that's why I responded the way I do. I think it's a big deal what we're able to do. I think the brain's ability to just rewire itself in a way that makes it stronger, faster, more resilient, can have an impact on so many people's lives. It's a great way to wake up in the morning, that's for sure.
Thank you for that. So, Mendability sits at the intersection of neuroscience, autism, and telehealth. What's the personal story or moment that pulled you into this work and made you say, I'm going all in on this platform?
I have a degree in biochemistry, and so it helps me understand what happens with our program and things like that. But I was not going to go that way. I had a graphic design company. I like to make things beautiful. I like to leave places more beautiful than they were, and I was quite successful at it. And in parallel, my mother was managing a clinic, and she was getting more and more government funding to support more and more individuals with neurological conditions, severe neurological conditions. Seemed to be the only one to be able to help them, and they were sending her the worst cases. But there were more and more coming, and she needed somebody to help her, and she reached out to me to say, "Hey, can you help me grow this thing and manage this thing?" I said, "Sure, mom, anything to help you. It seems like what you're doing is good for people." But I didn't really realize and understand what was happening and what she was doing until I joined the company and I started to grow it. And I started to see what needed to happen. We're going to need randomized controlled trials. We're going to need to automate a few things to make things more efficient so that more people can benefit. And then I was just then exposed to story after story of recovery, of recovery, of recovery. And I was like, this thing works. Everything we throw at it. We had severe seizure disorders. We even had dementia and Parkinson's and stroke. I was like, this thing works all the time. This is amazing. And this is when I realized I can't go back to drawing and doodling little logos for people. This this is so much more important. And I had a recurring dream when I was a teenager, and it came back to me when I was in this position of making a decision about what I was going to do with my career. And in this dream, I see this doll house, and the front wall is removed, and I see there's a bunch of teenagers coming in very sad, and then they come in and they're very happy, and they're eating nice food and they're playing games, lots of foosball, and they're hanging out. And I had the thing, this is it. I can help people who are unhappy to become happy just by helping their brain realize that the world is a good place, process things faster and more comfortably and all that good stuff. And I was like, okay, this is it. I found my place in the universe and I'm going to stay here.
That's actually really, really, really inspiring. A lot of parents are listening and are, I would say, tired of new acronyms and therapies. How would you explain the sensory enrichment therapy to a stressed out parent in a way that feels simple and hopeful and not just like one more program?
Yeah. The exercises take 30 seconds to a minute to do. And usually we'll assign 4 or 5 of them. And they're designed to be done as a family. So you think 5 minutes, I can do this, but it's actually more like 15 because we need to be done this to be done in a group. So it's 15 minutes. It's 3 times the same game, but mom is going to do it with a sibling so that the child with autism is watching. And then the mom is going to receive the same exposure, is going to do the same game, but on herself. And the child's going to watch that. And then it's going to be his turn to participate. So that's why it's done 3 times. And there's a reason for doing it in this way. You can imagine that, it strengthened the family bonds because what we're doing is stimulating the brain and making it want to change. Okay, the brain only changes when it wants to. And it wants to mostly because it wants to protect itself or restore some kind of balance and learn for the future because there's something important that it knows is going to happen. It has to have a very strong reason. And so what we do is we give it a reason to change. And the best way to do that is to stimulate that at the same time as we're doing our activities, a pleasurable experience. We stimulate the reward center in the brain. So when you do that to each other, physiologically, there's a bond that happens. And often children with autism are born with an inability to regulate a particular chemical in the brain that strengthens and creates that bond, that human bond. It's called oxytocin. And when you do pleasurable things in a physical context, and there's oxytocin being released, and the brain gets a surge of oxytocin every time it happens. So that's why we do it in this social context. But the exercises themselves also are meant to trigger. So within weeks, within days, the child is the one who asks for it. And I know it's a big deal for parents who do therapy after therapy because they do drills and it's hours and it's stressful and it only works in a very specific context that the child is being trained in, and it doesn't generalize, and they get these promises and then get this progress in the clinical setting. And then when something happens in the real world was, hey, yeah, I know he knows how to do this, and it falls apart. There's a lot of disappointment. But what we're doing is we're making the brain grow a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and everything's getting a bit faster. Everything's going to be a little bit easier. Everything's getting a little bit more comfortable. And the story changes from that. How would I describe it in a way that makes them think, oh, it's not just one more program? I'm going to give you an example of one protocol and show you how quick it is and how powerful it is. It's basically pairing the sense of smell and a sense of touch at the same time. So smell something you like. It could be anything. I've got on my desk this IKEA candle, and it smells lovely. It smells like berries. It's really quite lovely. It works every time. I get goosebumps every time I smell it. But it can be anything, so long as the kid likes it. So sometimes he cannot tell you, and so you have to guess. And if you have to guess, just go with candy smells, strawberry, vanilla, chocolate, this kind of stuff. And you're pretty sure that the kid's going to like it. And you give him a choice between 1 or 2 smells. Do you like this one? Did you like this one? And the act of choosing is going to stimulate the olfactory bulb. So you get that stimulation. So smelling stimulates the olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb is connected to every other part of the brain almost. That's why it's a key component to memory. So you get lots of cool stuff: dopamine, motivation, memory formation, pleasure. Dopamine is what adds color to your world. And then you add a pleasurable tactile experience. So you can use a back scratcher and give it to the kid, or you can stroke their back, or you can play with their ear, whatever they like. Again, it's hard to tell whether they like it or not, so you have to experiment a little bit until you find that. But the tactile stimulation, this is a rush of serotonin. And serotonin is what helps you feel in control. It's the fuel that the brain uses to do almost everything, even regulating dopamine. So it's a very important chemical to have well regulated in the brain. And the more you do those experiences, the more you get the brain to produce a surge of serotonin through pleasure, the more the brain says, hey, I want to be able to handle this situation better next time. So it will start to change the way it releases or absorbs or produces its chemicals so that the next time the same experience happens, it can respond faster and more efficiently and better and get more out of it. And this is how we get the brain to regulate more dopamine and more serotonin better. This gets even better. When you combine them, there's a third event that happens, and I think it's our secret sauce. There's a release of norepinephrine in the brain that, in a way, that induces a state of hyperplasticity. It's like hyper learning mode. And the brain's like, whatever you're going to do after this is going to stick better because the brain is in plastic mode. It's ready to learn, it's ready to make changes. And so that's anybody listening and who wants to get to feel better, to feel more at peace, more in control, just find a way to smell something you like, give yourself a back scratch or have somebody else do it to you and do it to your child. The first time they come home from school, they're tired, they're worn out, they've been pressured to perform and to conform and to do things that are hard for them. They're worn out and they're going to go home, and in a place where they feel safe, they're going to explode because they know they're safe and they can release all of that stuff. They don't have to perform anymore. They can just be their own selves. Well, the first thing they do when you come home is you give them that dose of dopamine, that dose of serotonin, oxytocin too, because there's that physical touch that they receive, and they're going to relax, refill their batteries, and they're going to have a nice afternoon. Their family's going to have a nice afternoon. So just try it. The effect lasts about an hour or two. So do it as many times during the day as you want.
This is amazing to hear actually. And this is coming from decades of knowledge and experience. And I have to ask you, is there one outcome or story, either from your research or from helping a family, some story that still gives you goosebumps to this day?
Yep. I will try not to cry this time, but it's my favorite story. It has to do with someone who came to us because they had Parkinson's, late stage, and in order to they're completely frozen. You know, early stage Parkinson's you shake, right? And then late stage you can't move anymore. It's over. And it's because your brain stops producing dopamine. Dopamine is what makes your controls your movement, and it sends messages to your muscles, something to do with moving. So the brain stops being able to produce dopamine, but dopamine is what adds color to your life, right? And so when you don't have dopamine, your life is in black and white. You have no appetite, you don't care, nothing's fun. You just blah. You're not depressed, but nothing is fun anymore. And so they came to us at that stage for the physical comfort, but we knew for the ability to be able to move again. They wanted to be able to get over the Parkinson's. But we knew that that person was also living a very sad life. And when we did the first session with them during the assessment, say, okay, you're going to smell, we're going to touch, because this is so easy. So we just, do it all the time. And the first time he smelled, he started to shake and he started to cry. And he said the first words that he said during the session, he'd been there for an hour, and he said, "This feels so good." And this is what we want everybody to feel. This is what the first purpose of this program is, for people to feel good. And then after that, we'll start stimulating repair in key brain systems so that specific tasks can be accomplished. But the very first thing we want to do is want people to feel good. And kids with autism don't have a nice life. Yeah, that's the story I love to share most of the time.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's quite the story. Uh, So, from a business and impact standpoint, what does your ideal customer journey look like? From the moment a parent or a school, if you work with schools, discovers you to the point where they're seeing real change and telling others about mendability.
So they discover that we exist through an ad, or they Google, things, and then they find us. The ideal journey is to give it a try, and then they get their first little games that they play, and they experiment, and they just yesterday, we had a family who just started. She started 3 days ago, and then 2 days so the day after, I reached out and to see how it was going, and the mom said, "Well, I don't know if it has anything to do with this, but for the very first time in his life, while I was doing the protocol, he said, 'I love you, mom.'" And she was trying to hold back the tears, and she was trying not to be too hopeful because she'd for so many years, she'd been given false hopes and things like that, and so she was, "I don't know if it has anything to do," like, she didn't dare hoping. And so, yeah, I want them to experiment with this. I want them to look for ways to make their child or their loved one who's going to participate want to participate, and show it. This is one of the reasons we ask the parent to do it on themselves before to do it on the kid, so the kid can see how much fun it is and how safe it is, and it makes them curious. They say, "Oh, I want to do this too." And then just let nature do what it does, and then see what happens, and then believe in it and be consistent with it.
And on the technical side, what's been the most painful or expensive mistake you've made building abilities? And what would you do differently if you were starting from scratch today? Because believe me, we know that mistakes can happen all the time on membership sites and e-learning sites in general.
Technical, expensive, technical mistake. Um, Go cheap with the development team. At first, we thought we would find, our thing was pretty straightforward to build, and we'll just go online and find ourselves a freelancer who's and then bid and get, as cheap as possible, but somebody who looks like they have the right skills. And I remember for 3 months, just banging our heads, just it was breaking all the time. And we had a little bit of coding experience, so we could go into the code and see what they were doing, and we could see the mess that they were creating. And so in the end, we decided to hire internally our own development team because we knew this was going to be an ongoing thing, and we found ourselves a really cool, smart, kind PhD guy in biometrics. And what we asked him to do was way below his pay grade, his abilities, but he bought into the mission of the company and what the impact he would have, and so he was happy to come on board as a software architect. But yeah, it was more expensive. It looked like it was more expensive, but in the end, we were wasting our time completely. So it was like pouring money down the drain with the other solution. So yeah, not be afraid to invest in a proper software or the proper team. It's a mistake. This is what I would do differently next time.
So when you think about the next 3 to 5 years for mendability, what are you most excited about, either scientifically or in terms of the business you're building around it?
Yeah, no, for me, it's the science. We're always doing new clinical studies, and there's one that's coming out that we're about to start really soon. I can't say a whole lot because it hasn't been approved by the review board yet. But we're hoping that they're going to say yes to us doing brain imaging on teenagers with autism before and after, and compare with another leading program. When you have autism, most of the people say, okay, it looks like you have behavior issues, go to this type of therapy that is going to help solve the behavior issues. And so we're going to compare our results to the results of these guys with brain imaging and everything. And that's going to be really cool because we know in animals who are exposed to our methodology, we know what parts of their brains change. And so we're going to look at the same brain systems in humans to see if it correlates. And we know enough. It's a pretty good guess that we have, but we've never looked at the pictures. And so I'm really excited to see if it's actually true that what we're doing is an exact replica of what happens in the human model, the animal model. Because when that happens, when we're able to give that answer, then it's going to open a lot of closed doors, I hope. Yeah.
If you could put one short message on a sticky note and hand it to every parent of an overwhelmed or autistic child, what would it say?
Make them feel safe first.
Great. Well, Kim,
Yeah.
it's great having you as a guest. And that's about it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Risto.